Hi everybody, this is Duke with a video explanation on FAA registration and remote ID registration of UAS with the FAA. This video was filmed in March of 2024, so all information is, to the best of my knowledge, up to date at this time, though of course it changes over time. So in this video what I want to go over briefly is a decision chart I've created to try to help you understand what you need to be doing, how you want to register your aircraft and whether you need to use remote ID or not, etc., etc. Okay. And then I'll go over some examples of remote ID modules and things like that you can add to your aircraft. And I'll show you a little bit of the FAA's drone zone and how you actually would add a aircraft or device to your inventory. So let's start with looking at this chart a little bit here. I know it looks rather big, but it shouldn't be too intimidating. I try to color code some things if that helps anyone. The basic premise here is we're starting with somebody getting a new drone, whether they built it or bought it or whatever, and we categorize how we're going to fly it and how much it weighs and what we're using it for, and that helps us make some decisions about how to register it and if we need remote ID or not. Okay. Really briefly here, the reason why I don't require remote ID as a textbook item for your classes or something, or include it in your course fee, is because for our courses here at USU, we always fly inside of FRIAs, at least currently, and so we don't need remote ID if we're flying inside of a FRIA and have our aircraft registered, and that's why I don't require it. But of course, you can add remote ID to your aircraft if you want to. That's totally up to you. If you have the means or the reason behind doing that, that's a valid reason, then you might as well. Okay. So over here we have our new drone. And basically under 250 grams, flying for fun, you're done. You're done with this video. You're done with this chart. At least at this time, there's no registration required. There's no remote ID required. So that's a good place to be in terms of all the regs and stuff. But most of us fall outside of that category. And some of us are kind of in between categories. So that's pretty easy there. Over here on the right hand side we have the classification for what we would be doing in our UAS courses basically. Most of our aircraft are over 250 grams, but we are flying for fun or recreationally. Students aren't earning money by flying the aircraft in class. So we're going to be flying in a FRIA during the course programs, and all we need to do is register our aircraft under recreational use, and you're ready to go. Okay. So that's the path that most of you will follow in the program, but of course you're welcome to choose other paths as well, and I'll explain some of those. A FRIA is a federally recognized area that you can fly UAS or drones without remote ID, but if they're over 250 grams, you do need to still register the aircraft as an aircraft in your FAA drone zone with a registration number that is assigned to you, not to the aircraft. Okay. So if you're going through the program in the UAS courses we teach, you can do this once, get an FAA registration number for yourself. And if you're flying everything recreationally inside of a FRIA, you just stick that number on all the aircraft you operate inside the FRIA recreationally, and you're good to go. That's all you need to do. Okay. The more complicated parts of this come when you want to fly outside of a FRIA, okay, or you want to fly commercially. And of course, those are both fine things to do. It just makes it a little bit more complex. Okay. So what we're going to do here is look at the flying for fun recreationally outside of a FRIA first, because that may be more likely for students to do. Just you want to fly the drone at your grandparents' house over the holidays or something like that. You're not inside of a FRIA anymore, so what do you do? And then we'll cover commercial use, which is what some of you may be interested in doing in the future, or you might already have work right now where you fly commercially and you want to make sure you're in compliance. So if we're over 250 grams and we're flying for fun, but we're going to fly outside of a FRIA, we have kind of two paths here. And the end results here are all in yellow. Okay, what the kind of the final thing you're going to do. But basically makes a difference whether you bought the aircraft or you built the aircraft. And the only reason why that matters is because if you bought it, manufacturers should include remote ID built into the aircraft, basically at this point. And if you built it yourself, then you're going to have to install remote ID in the aircraft yourself. Either way, we're going to use something called the DOC list. And this is the FAA's Declaration of Compliance list. So if you are in this category here, and you bought an aircraft from Best Buy or Amazon or something, the manufacturer should have included remote ID in the aircraft. And so you can double check that by looking at the DOC list. So you're going to search for your aircraft. If it appears on the list, let's say we're going to search for a DJI Mavic. Here's a Mavic 3. We hit view, double check the listing here. And as long as everything's in order, we'll come back to that in a second. It always takes a minute to load. I don't know why. If it appears in the list, then we're in good shape. Then you'll take the next step. You register your aircraft with the FAA under recreational use with your registration number, not a number per aircraft, but you'll need the serial number from the remote ID module built into your aircraft when you register it. So let's see here. Here's our DJI Mavic, and ours supposedly happens to fall within the serial number range. If it falls outside of that range, you want to do some more research and see if it's compliant or not. But that's why you want to check the listing to make sure the serial number is one that you actually have. Okay. If that's the case and it's listed there, it appears on the list as down to the serial number, then you go into the drone zone, okay, which is here. And here's the main page for drone zone. You want to create an account if you haven't done that already. But you go into the drone zone to recreational flyer and you add device. Okay. You would say my aircraft, yes, it does have remote ID. My aircraft has standard remote ID. It's built into the drone. It's not a module added on. And you fill this out here. And then you put the serial number from your remote ID module there and hit add device. And you're ready to roll. Okay. Your aircraft is registered to fly for fun outside of FRIAs at that point, as once you stick the registration number on the aircraft as well. Okay. Let's say your aircraft's too old. It doesn't appear on this DOC list, unfortunately. It's an old one you bought from a friend or off KSL or something. There's no declaration of compliance for the aircraft, so odds are it doesn't have remote ID built into it. In that case, you kind of fall into the same camp as if you had built a drone yourself, whether it's a plane or quadcopter or whatever. You're going to have to add some kind of module to it, an add-on piece of hardware in order to be compliant. Okay. Once you find a module, so let's go here, go back. I'll show you some examples of modules in a second, but let's just say Bluemark is a company that makes these modules. Again, you can double check, make sure the module you're buying, or if you already have one, is compliant. Once that loads, there we go, serial numbers here. Now the modules should all be compliant because that's kind of what they're designed for, whereas the drones could be older than this regulation and not have this built in. But you always want to double check the serial numbers just to make sure. Yeah. And you found a module, that's great. Now what you're going to do is you're going to register your aircraft with the FAA under recreational use with your number that's assigned to you, but additionally you register the remote ID broadcast module as a separate device, and that's when you'll need the remote ID broadcast module serial number when you register it. When you're flying recreationally, you can take a broadcast module and move it between aircraft. If you're going to fly different aircraft, you can just pull it off one and put it on the other. You can't do that with Part 107, but with recreational flight you can. So here we talked about adding a device like a drone that had remote ID built in, but let's say my aircraft doesn't have remote ID built in. Okay, this is just the aircraft registration. I'm going to say it's a home built. I built it myself. We'll say it's a Holy Bro, like the one we built in class. Oops. X500. Okay, I hit add device and it adds it to my inventory. And then I hit add device again over here. What I'll do is I'll say yes, and then I'll say it's a module I'm registering this time. It's not an aircraft really, it's just a module. Okay. I'm going to enter Bluemark, the model, DB, whatever it was, 122 or something. I'll add the serial number in here, and then I'll add it to my inventory. Okay, this is all under recreational, so then I can move the module around between aircraft whenever I want, basically, as long as I'm following all the other regulations and using it when I'm flying, that kind of thing. Okay, so that's this path over here. You register the aircraft just like you would up here, actually. Same exact thing. You're going to register the aircraft with the FAA under recreational rules. Only the difference is up here, you're inside the FRIA, so you don't need a remote ID at all. But down here, you need a remote ID broadcast module, and so you have that registered and you'll stick it on your drone. The broadcast module, again, looks kind of like this, or kind of like this, some kind of hockey puck thing you might stick on your drone. There's some more assembly required type modules that look like this. And whatever it is, you need to make sure it's installed on the aircraft, but you can move it between aircraft in the hobbyist or recreational side of things. Now to the commercial side. So some of you said, well, I might as well register as Part 107. I already have my Part 107 license, and I say, yeah, you sure can. If you're, going to use it commercially, then go for it. If you're not going to use it commercially immediately and you don't have any like plans to actually use it, you're just thinking like just in case, In my opinion, you might as well just leave it recreational use because it'll save you some money, and you can always re-register it as Part 107 later if you want to. But of course, it's up to you. So let's say no matter what size it is, I'm going to be making money with it. That means I have to register it with the FAA and have remote ID. Okay, we go through the same process here. Did you buy it? Is it listed on the DOC list? It's built in? Great. Go ahead and register it. It's not built in? Grab a module. Did you build it? Grab a module. Register under Part 107. Register in Part 107. So very similar over here. The main difference is you're going to register these ones under recreational use. Okay? These ones are going to register under Part 107 because it's commercial use. And again, if you're under Part 107, you cannot move the module around between different aircraft. So when you register, it's all kind of one piece together. Let's look at that over here for a second. Part 107. Add device. Okay. So in this case, I'm going to say yes every time because it's Part 107, so my aircraft has to have remote ID on it. It just depends on whether the remote ID is built into your aircraft from the manufacturer or whether you had to add a module after the fact. Either way, you're going to fill the rest of this information in, put the serial number from the remote ID module or the remote ID built into your aircraft, and add device. In this case, when you add device, it'll add it to your cart. You're going to have to pay $5 to register the aircraft because it's a commercial aircraft, and that's the fee the FAA charges right now to do that. Okay. The only caveat to this where you would choose no inside of the Part 107 is if for some reason you had a waiver related to remote ID or you're some kind of operator that is exempt from this regulation, but that's not going to be the case for most of you watching the video probably, so you'll be selecting yes, choosing the device type of remote ID, okay, and then filling out the information, adding the device and paying for it. Okay. And that pretty much covers this side of it. Okay. The difference again here is you register under Part 107 instead of under recreational use. Okay. And you have a registration number assigned to the vehicle under Part 107. So it will give you a number that's different for every single aircraft you register, whereas under recreational use, you just have one number for you that you put on all of your aircraft that you fly recreationally. I hope that makes sense. Okay. So there's our overall chart. Again, I'll have a link to this chart in the video description so you can look at it and review it if you want. Any errors are mine, but I tried to go over this and make sure I wasn't missing anything. Okay, the other thing I wanted to show you briefly was some of these modules that are out there. So unless you have a drone with built-in remote ID, then you're going to have to get a module in many cases. So I just thought I'd show you a few, and I'll leave these slides linked as well in the video description for you to review. So first, standard remote ID, if it's built into the aircraft, you don't have to buy a module. But as a note, you want to make sure that you verify the serial number. Okay, just like this. We actually had this happen with some of our AUTELs. They're AUTEL Evo 2s, but they're older Evo 2s and they're not compliant, so we had to buy a module for them. Okay, but that's basically between you and the manufacturer of the aircraft to figure that out and sort that one out. But for many of you, you need to add an extra module to your aircraft, especially if you want to use the aircraft you build in the program. Okay? And so you'll need a broadcast module, and there's different kinds of those. But we do want to make sure that the module we're looking at, or the module that we've maybe already purchased without looking, but now we're double checking, want to make sure it's listed in the Declaration of Compliance as well, and that it's by the serial number listed in there, it's compliant, we're good to go. Okay. Once you've double checked all that, then there are basically some, let's see, skip here, 3 categories, okay, that are, that Duke puts them into, that I put them into in my mind anyways. There's some self-powered, self-contained modules, and more wiring required modules. The self-powered modules have a battery built in, so you don't have to wire anything at all. You just Velcro it to your drone and go. And those can work just fine. They're a little bit heavier, a little bit bigger, but if that's what you're going for, or if you have an off-the-shelf platform that's just too old to broadcast, you don't really want to open it up and dig into the wiring maybe. You just get a module you stick on the top. Okay. So we'll look at that category first of the self-powered ones. This is a DB, well, it's a Blue Mark drone beacon battery, I guess I should say. We do have one of these in the program that we've used before. It costs about $140, so a little bit more on the expensive side, unfortunately. A little bit heavier, but it has its own battery. You charge it up via USB-C, turn it on, wait for the indicator lights to give you the right indicators, and then you take off and fly around. That's the same with this model from Holystone, which I have not used, but have it on a good faith from someone I trust who does this professionally. These modules work pretty well. A little bit cheaper, a little bit lighter, I don't know how long the battery lasts, but easy to stick on a drone, and there you go, you're ready to roll. Okay, so those are two modules that I have experience with, or have heard experience with directly, that should be good options. There's others out there, of course, that are being developed or already sold or on pre-order or whatever. So you might look into those as well. But I'd say do your homework, make sure it's a good module and going to give you what you want. If you look at the self-contained modules, self-contained, these have all the bits and pieces besides battery. They need some kind of power. Okay, these could be a good option for non-flight controller aircraft, like an RC airplane that you want to fly outside of a FRIA. Okay, one of these is the Flight Test Easy ID. It costs $100. You just power it up. It gives you the LED indicators, and you go and fly your plane around wherever you're going to fly at. I do have one of these in the lab that you can check out if you'd like. It seems to work just fine. I haven't flown it, but I have tested it in the lab. Easy enough. You just power it up. Okay. Here's another similar model. This is from Bluemark DB121. It's a PCB, basically a circuit board. Doesn't have a case around it or anything. I'm sure you could 3D print something. And it costs about $100 and weighs 11 grams. This one does have external antennas, so that's something that's different between some of these modules where they have external antennas or not. You may or may not like that or want that on your aircraft. Okay. This one here doesn't have external antennas. It's built into the circuit board. Okay. And here's one other self-contained module, the Drone Tag BS. Okay, and BS, yeah, kind of stands for what you think it does. Drone Tag was quite flamboyant in their marketing of this one, I guess you could say. And this basically, you just have to power it and attach the antennas, and you're good to go. Okay, you don't have to do anything else. Now with this module and this module, you can access the GPS. It's included in this for like a flight controller or something else. If you want to use the GPS for something else besides remote ID, you can. I'm not sure on this model, though. I have to look at it again and double check. But a lot of these, you can access the GPS to do like return to home and stuff like that if you're setting that up on your aircraft. But you don't have to. You can just power it and forget about it, basically. Okay. Then we have the assembly required modules. Basically, they need power and they need a separate GPS module. So these are going to be the smallest ones, most configurable, I guess we could say. You're going to have to wire them up yourself, though. So if you're not comfortable with that, then I would stay away from these. One of them is the Bluemark DB122 FPV. This GPS here is not included with the module. You're going to have to wire it in yourself. Okay. These modules all support kind of like pass-through of the GPS to a flight controller. So you can use the GPS for remote ID and then also use it for return to home or other GPS navigation modes on your aircraft. The price goes down, of course, because you have to buy this other module separately. So they can make it cheaper because they didn't have to include it in the main circuit board here. Weighs about 4 grams, a little bit lighter. This one does have an external antenna. Okay. Here's one from a company called Phoenix. This one's extremely small. It requires its own GPS and its own power, of course, as well. But you can pass that GPS through to the flight controller again and gain benefits there. Joshua Barlow did do a video reviewing this remote ID module. You can check that out if you'd like. And this one has a built-in circuit board type antenna, no external antennas on this module. This last one here is called the Drone Tag DRI. This one comes in external antenna and internal antenna versions. I was not able to find out if they've updated the firmware and stuff on this. They were supposed to update the firmware at some point so that it would work with Betaflight and other flight control softwares. But for right now, all that I'm aware of it working with is ArduPilot and PX4. Basically plug and play with those. It's $55, okay, and it's very lightweight. But you will want to do some research into your use case for these. Okay. So all of these have a link to the actual product, so I'll let you look at those. If you're wondering what kind of voltage can you plug it into, what kind of battery power does it run off of, those kind of things. Of course, those specifications are on those web pages. But those are the main considerations you want to think about when you're using these modules on your aircraft. And again, we've talked about already whether it's Part 107 or recreational. There's some other things you have to think about there, how you want to register it, and if the module is going to stay on one aircraft forever, or if you're going to be able to move it around to different aircraft is up to you. One other thing you might consider, some of these modules kind of tote the fact that they're NDAA compliant. So if any of you are in the world of Blue UAS and you have to have all the parts sourced, not from China or other places that are on the blacklist, then you may want to double check some of these modules and make sure the parts that they source are NDAA compliant or on the blue list or those variety of other topics out there that are of interest to certain parties. One last thing I want to make you aware of, okay, is there are some remote ID modules out there that I would not recommend you get because they are not meant for an end user. They're meant for a manufacturer. This is an example right here of one from Holybro. Okay. This product is designed for the standard remote ID solution, targeting manufacturers and system integrators. Okay. So what they're doing is they're selling this. The hardware is the same, but the Holybro has not gone through the FAA's approval process. So this module is not listed on the DOC site because it hasn't been approved. So what they're doing is they're selling this to you, and then you're supposed to go, as a manufacturer, to the FAA and get it approved. Now, as an individual, you're not going to do that. If you were building a bunch of custom drones and that was your business, then you might just buy a bunch of these and throw them on the aircraft and go to the FAA and say, hey, I'd like to get approval for this, and then you can sell it, and it would be approved. But as they are right now, this is not approved. So don't buy these ones because even though they broadcast pretty much the same information, they're not approved from the FAA, so they're not technically compliant with the regulations. There's two of them out there I'm aware of. One's from Holybro, one's from MRO. But just be aware, if you search for remote ID, these might pop up. But make sure you look for this gotcha here. And most of all, make sure you check the DOC list and see if it's actually on the list or not. If it's not, then it's safe to say at this point, don't buy it. Okay? I hope this helps explain a little bit of this and what you might want to choose on your path here where you're headed. Again, I'll have this chart linked as well as my slides in the video description there, so you can look at that. Please feel free to ask any questions. You know how to reach me, or stop by lab hours or something like that, and we can figure out what would be best for you and/or how to integrate it into your aircraft in a good way. So, all right. Well, thanks for watching.